The original Star Trek series debuted way back in 1966. But despite decent reviews, it was canceled after 3 seasons. However, the show developed a cult following, which led to an animated series and finally a feature film in 1979. Now, unfortunately, this film was unsuccessful and really wasn't very good. And it looked like Star Trek was going to be relegated to the dustpan of history. That changed, however, 3 years later with the release of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. This movie was a massive success and is beloved by fans and critics. And it really launched Star Trek into what it is today, a worldwide cultural phenomenon. Several successful follow-up films led us to a new series. Star Trek: The Next Generation, launched in 1987, it ran till 1994, and unlike the original series, was a commercial success and introduced us to Captain Jean-Luc Picard, played by Patrick Stewart. After the television run, it spawned 4 feature films. However, this is when the cracks in the armor began to appear, as really, of those 4 films, only Star Trek First Contact is any good. And by 2002 Star Trek Nemesis, you can see that everyone just was tired. The writing, the directing, the acting, it just seemed like everybody was done. In 2009, however, the entire series was reimagined and rebooted by J.J. Abrams. The film, Star Trek, not only reimagined the show, but it created a brand new timeline, effectively erasing everything before it in terms of canon. However, the sequel, Star Trek Into Darkness, while being a financial success, is seen by many as a cheap remake to Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan, and the follow-up to this, Star Trek Beyond, underperformed at the box office and is generally disliked by fans. Now, in 2017, CBS decided to bring Star Trek back to television with the release of Star Trek Discovery. Critics love this show. I don't see why. It's terrible. And the fan base would agree. 35% on Rotten Tomatoes. It doesn't look like Star Trek. It doesn't sound like Star Trek. And as we've seen so many times in modern Hollywood, the attempt to shoehorn modern-day political thought and messaging into a show, especially a show that takes place in the 23rd century, feels forced and unnecessary. Also, following a theme of attempting to make money through nostalgia, CBS decided to bring back Patrick Stewart and release Picard in 2020. And man, if you thought Discovery was bad, you should get a load of this show. The first 2 seasons are terrible. If you were a fan of Picard in the Next Generation series and in the movies, you wouldn't even recognize the man. The brave and stoic and unflappable Jean-Luc Picard is now written as a doddering old fool, constantly apologizing for his past and being one-upped by his younger cast members. So when it was announced that they would bring back a final season of Star Trek Picard, I had no intentions of watching it. I was done. Not worth my time. But then it was announced that the original Next Generation cast would reprise their roles. So I started thinking, hey, yeah, maybe. Then finally, people who I follow on YouTube began reviewing early episodes, saying how good it was. So I figured, you know what the hell, I'll give it one more try for old time's sakes. In this season, we find Jean-Luc Picard reuniting with his former command crew of the USS Enterprise to face a mysterious new enemy who is hunting Jack, the son of Beverly Crusher, who is once again played by Gates McFadden. Also reprising their roles are Jonathan Frakes as William Riker, Michael Dorn as Worf, Marina Satiris as Deanna Troi, LeVar Burton as Geordi LaForge, and Brett Spiner as Data. Also, added to this are Jeri Ryan, reprising her role of Seven of Nine from Star Trek Voyager and the last 2 seasons of Picard. Michelle Hurd is back as Raffi, who was also in the last 2 seasons. And finally, we have Todd Stashwick as Captain Liam Shaw of the USS Titan and Ed Speleer as Jack Crusher. We also have a different showrunner this time. Terry Matalas is at the helm of this series, and he had previously been the showrunner for the Sci-Fi Channel show 12 Monkeys, which if you haven't watched, you really owe it to yourself to go check out. It's fantastic. Listen, the last decade or so of Star Trek has not been kind to the venerable old series, and on the surface, this looks like another cash grab and nostalgia bait. And with as bad as the first 2 seasons were, expectations, pretty low. Sometimes, however, despite everything, the stars align and things go our way, and boy, does that happen here. Star Trek Picard Season 3 is not only significantly better than the first 2 seasons, it's the best Star Trek we've had since The Next Generation went off the air in 1994. You can tell that care and love went into this program. And unlike the people who brought us the reimagined movies and Star Trek Discovery, showrunner Terry Matalas clearly not only loves Star Trek, but is well-versed in its stories and its character. When the last time we saw these characters together in Star Trek Nemesis, they looked bored and tired. But boy, do they look completely revigorated here, despite every actor being 21 years older. Even the new characters are significantly better written this year than they were in the previous season. And Ed Speleer's Jack Crusher is a tremendous addition to the Star Trek universe. Your main cast fits seamlessly back into their characters, like no time has gone past. And Patrick Stewart is absolutely reinvigorated this year. And he plays Picard like he should be played. Older, sure, maybe a little slower, but just as wise, just as brave, just as daring as we've seen him in the past. But the absolute star of the series for me is Jonathan Frakes playing William Riker. Now, after the initial series ran its course, Frakes has been usually found behind the camera. Hell, if you look up his IMDb page, lists 47 directing credits since 1994. But he goes right back into the Riker character seamlessly and gives the best performance of any of the cast. And if you're a Star Trek fan and you love The Next Generation, the last 2 episodes of this series will probably leave a lump in your throat. This is nostalgia done right, not just for nostalgia's sake. It's smart, well written, well acted, not only showing respect to the old cast and story, but adding to it and moving it forward. So yes, it is possible to bring back existing characters, add new characters to the story without those new characters attempting to overshadow the legacy cast. Are you listening, Star Wars? So let's give this series an outstanding 8.5 out of 10. The good news is if you're a Next Generation fan and don't feel like suffering through the first 2 seasons of Picard, you don't have to. Pretty much everything in those seasons are ignored or mentioned in passing enough that you could pick up what happened, and honestly, that's for the best. It's terrible. Don't waste your time. And much like the original cast, who had a wonderful send-off with the movie Star Trek The Undiscovered Country, this Next Generation cast gets the proper send-off that they deserve. And without spoiling anything, the series, well, it ends with hope of a new series, which honestly, if it's led by the same showrunner, would be worth everyone's time, but we will see. And as always, if you like what you heard, click the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, And if you did not like what you heard, well, to hell with you. Nah, just kidding. I thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.